Now, according to research, 1 person in every 10 South Africans goes to bed hungry every day. Despite this, more than 10 million tons of food is wasted annually. The organization FoodForward has launched a petition to combat hunger in South Africa. The director at the organization, Andy Du Plessis, joins us more to provide some information about this initiative. Andy, thank you for making time for us this afternoon. How can we have 10 million tons of food being wasted annually, and yet 1 in 10 South Africans go hungry every day?
Hi, Clement, and thank you very much for having us. Yes, it's a staggering contradiction, but it's a reality. South Africa is a net surplus of food, so we produce enough food for all of South Africans, and we are able to export a large chunk of that food overseas to various markets. And yet, at the same time, 34% of that total food amount we produce is either dumped in landfill or incinerated, so it's lost or wasted throughout the supply chain, which is 10 million tons of food on an annual basis, which is just absurd. But the reasons why we have so much surplus food is because of supply chain dynamics that are oftentimes out of anybody's control. So things like over-ordering, poor forecasting, problems during the manufacturing process, incorrectly labeled goods, etc. All of those reasons account for why there are surplus foods. And that food is not good enough to put on a shop shelf to be sold, but it is still edible. The product inside is still edible, it's usable, it's good for human consumption. And since 2009, FoodForward SA has been receiving the surplus from a number of food donors. But the part of the problem is liability issues. And this is why a lot of our food manufacturers are not donating food, but rather choosing to incinerate or dumping that stock, which is why we launched this campaign called Repurpose the Surplus. And it's a petition for a food donations policy for South Africa. It will be a first for South Africa, for the continent, in fact. And we are hoping that with this petition, people will sign up and support us so that we can get the National Assembly to discuss this issue and hopefully start the process of a food donations policy so that we can redirect and repurpose that 10 million tons of food. With just 50% of that 10 million tons of food, we can provide all our people that are food insecure, around 30 million people that are food insecure sometime during the month, with 2 meals a day, Clement.
Yeah, I mean, 30% is quite substantial. What kind of food is being dumped and wasted?
So it's throughout the food value chain. So from farmers, when a farmer is growing and selling to a retailer, for example, or to a manufacturer, they want very specific product with no blemishes, particular color, and a very particular size. But the farmer doesn't have control over that. So when he harvests, he's got to separate what's good enough to give to whoever the retailer or the manufacturer is selling to, and the rest he's got no market for, so he's got to either dump it or incinerate, dig a hole for that stuff. Then in the manufacturing process, huge amounts of surpluses, good food, because of something that goes wrong on the production line where the labeling goes skew, but they produce 20 million units. That goods are not sellable. Or maybe the inside of the product, the color's different, but it's still food safe. Those are the kind of things that's happening on the manufacturing side. And on the retail side, at distribution centers, sometimes the food doesn't reach the stores in time with a 6-month shelf life on it. Maybe they've missed it by a month, but it can't go onto that shop shelf because it's got 5-month shelf life, and it should have 6 months by the time we buy it. Those are some of the reasons why there will always be surpluses throughout the food value chain.
So not only does this threaten food security, but it's also a waste of resources used in food production and even distribution.
Absolutely, which is even more criminal considering we've got the kinds of load shedding we experience, etc. So the CSIR in the 2021 technical report on food loss and waste, they shared with us that around 64 billion rand is what it's costing our economy, this 10 million tons of food, and that excludes the natural and human resources to produce that food. So, all unnecessary. This problem can be solved. We can address within a matter of a few months. We can redress the food security crisis, feed all our people. In South Africa, 50% of child deaths in hospitals are attributed to malnutrition. And in the Eastern Cape, we saw at the beginning of the year, which is why the Human Rights Commission held a commission of inquiry, where 13 children died of starvation. This is unwarranted and unnecessary hardship and suffering, which could be avoided if we connected the dots better.
Yeah, so let's talk about why companies are choosing to waste this food instead of donating it. They're choosing to dump it.
Yeah. So let me give you an example. Say a cereal manufacturer, for example, they're producing 20 million units during one run cycle. And during the cycle, something goes wrong with the conveyor belt, and the product on the outside goes skew. On the box of the cereal goes skew. Or someone notices that the labeling was incorrect, or there was a spelling error on the box outside. But inside, that cereal is good for human consumption, but that box has already been sealed. So it's cheaper for them just to dump and incinerate that stock than to start the process all over again. So those are some of the reasons. So another reason is canned goods. Maybe they're producing baked beans, and the color of the brine in the baked beans or the sauce in the baked beans is not the same color as it usually is. It may be a little lighter, it may be a little darker. And the consumers may be concerned about that. So they wouldn't put that product on the shelf. So it's not sellable, but it is edible. But that product is dumped in landfill. A lot of our food manufacturers and also use third-party logistics and third-party storage. And it costs them, if they've produced the goods and people aren't buying it on the consumer side, that goods sit with a third party, and that third party charges the manufacturer a daily rate. So it's even cheaper for them to dump that stock than to pay the daily rate over a 3 or 6 or 9 or 12-month period. So those are the inadequacies in the supply chain.
Yeah. So what contribution or impact do you think the introduction of this food donation policy would make?
Yeah. So there are several factors. The first is the food donations policy will provide guidelines around food safety, regulate food safety. In other words, explain from farm to fork how this food should be handled to make sure that the food is food safe by the time those that need it need to eat it. That's the first thing. The second thing is, because manufacturers don't have liability protection when they donate their goods, they are hesitant to donate that food. And we've done a survey with the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa, food actors and members. And a lot of them are saying that if there was liability protection, they would donate more instead of dumping or incinerating that stuff. So those are the two key issues around the legislative recommendations for the food donations policy. A third one is provide tax incentive for those companies that are donating and give them more tax breaks so that they're more incentivized to pass and repurpose that stock so that we can use that to feed people. And also we're calling on government to provide tax subsidies to non-profit organizations that are collecting that food, storing that food, and redistributing that food to the most vulnerable across the country.
All right. For people that want to sign this petition, where do they go to?
FoodForwardSA.org, and on our landing page there's a banner. You can learn more, click on the Learn More button, or you can click on the petition page, and it makes it clear why we are asking for this petition, and we're hoping government will address this policy, and hopefully we can feed our people and make sure that we end malnutrition across South Africa.
Yeah. Andy Du Plessis, thank you for making time.